Today, we're digging into a really powerful story from Kenya. It's all about a tradition as old as farming itself, one that was suddenly put on trial, and it challenges this fundamental right for farmers to, well, plant their own seeds.
I mean, think about that for a second. Could you actually be jailed for sharing a seed? It sounds completely wild, right? But for farmers in Kenya, this wasn't some far-fetched idea. It was a very real threat that turned a simple act of community into a potential crime. Let's get into how this all went down.
For centuries, farmers have done this one simple thing. They save the best seeds from their harvest to plant the next year. They share them with neighbors, and they preserve these amazing varieties that are perfectly suited to their local environment. But then, all of a sudden, this ancient tradition became illegal.
That's right. In 2012, a new law basically criminalized the free exchange of these indigenous seeds. This struck right at the heart of small-scale farming and threatened community seed banks. And the penalties? They were seriously harsh. Just look at this number. The potential fine was the equivalent of over 7,000 US dollars. For a small farmer, an amount like that isn't just a setback, it's absolutely life-ruining. And if a staggering fine wasn't enough, there was also the threat of prison. We're talking up to 2 years behind bars, just for sharing seeds. The stakes for these farmers were unbelievably high.
And you've got to understand why these seeds are so incredibly important. We're not talking about just any old seeds here. These indigenous seeds are literally the backbone of food security. They're naturally tough, they're perfectly adapted to local conditions, and they often do way better than commercial seeds when the weather gets bad. They represent generations of wisdom. So this new law created this huge clash. On one side, you had the government's official explanation. But on the other, you had farmers and food campaigners who saw something very, very different going on. The government's line was that this law was needed to stop the spread of fake, low-quality seeds that were hurting farms. But campaigners, they weren't buying it. They called it corporate capture, arguing that this was just a sneaky way to give a few big licensed companies a total monopoly on seeds, squeezing traditional farmer-saved seeds right out of the picture. And this law wasn't just some piece of paper. It had real teeth. It gave officials the actual power to go into community seed banks, places that were built to preserve local biodiversity, and just take the seeds. This was a direct threat, not just to one farmer, but to the entire community-led way of life. But here's where the story takes a turn. The farmers, they decided to fight back. And that led to a true turning point. A landmark legal decision that would change absolutely everything. And this wasn't some powerful corporation or a big lobby group. No, it was a small group of just 15 farmers. These farmers took on the whole system, filing a case in Kenya's high court to challenge the law and take back their rights. And man, this quote from Samuel Wathalame, one of those farmers, it just says it all. You can feel the history in his words, the hope for the future. This wasn't just about legal rules, it was personal. It was about family, about heritage. And they won. In an absolutely landmark decision, Kenya's High Court sided with the farmers. They declared that the key parts of that law were fundamentally unconstitutional. This was a huge, huge victory. So, why does this one court case in Kenya matter so much to all of us? Well, because its impact goes way beyond that courtroom. It sends ripples across the entire food system. This one ruling does so much. It protects food security by letting farmers use all these diverse, locally adapted seeds. It's a huge boost for climate-resilient farming. It preserves cultural knowledge. And maybe most importantly, it pushes back against corporate control and says, yes, traditional farming is essential. As food campaigner Elizabeth Atieno put it, this is a major blow against the corporate capture of our food. It's a win for resilience, for culture, and for a future where local communities actually have control over what they grow and what they eat. So, at the end of the day, that threat of fines and prison is gone. That simple, profound act of a farmer sharing a seed with their neighbor, well, it's no longer a crime in Kenya. It is once again just an act of community. And all of this leaves us with a really critical question. This story from Kenya shines a bright light on a global debate. Who should control the seeds that feed the world? The farmer out in the field or the corporation in the boardroom? That's something for all of us to think about.